Today's class, it's all about tertiary details. I have prepared quite a lot of different models to show you guys. I mean, that's not actually true. It's more like different versions of the same one, really. But we'll spend the whole class really talking about that, really focusing on that. There's a little bit of theory we will cover at the beginning, not a lot, not like some of the previous classes. So a lot of today will really be more of a sculpt along thing. So for all of you who are here live, I hope you all have something to work on since it's going to be a very practical class for at least 2/3 to almost 3/4. I just want to get a bit of theory out of the way first as to what are tertiary details, but also try to get you guys to maybe do a bit of observation as it relates to them. What kind of tertiary details do we have on a face? How do we figure out that kind of information? What kind of references do we have online too that we can sort of that we can look at if we need a bit of inspiration there as far as tertiary details are concerned? Now, I if you guys know me well enough, you know that I kind of like gross stuff, and actually today it's not going to be as bad as, let's say, fat and muscles, but there will be a bit of gross stuff in the beginning because we do character art, and not every character we do is always have perfect skin, of course. If you want to have a bit of naturalism in there, it kind of helps to sometimes break it up a little bit with imperfections, if we can call it that way. So it is useful to research some of these things. I'll show you guys a lot of references there, but honestly, for the most part, today will really be about being in ZBrush, doing a lot of sculpting, having a lot of fun there with layers and morph targets, and a whole bunch of stuff like surface detail or surface noise, rather. I have also an alpha to share with you guys, which is available on algang.studio. So for the handout for this class, is essentially a skin pore alpha and also a skin pore ZTL that you guys can go ahead and download. It's already available on algang.studio for today's class on tertiary details, so you can go ahead and grab that if you want to follow along. And so it's going to be a lot of just mix and matching different details. But before that, we really have to start with a bit of observation so that we really have a pretty good idea of where we're trying to go with the kind of details we'll be spending our time sculpting together there. Let me go ahead here and share my screen. Actually, no. Let me just tell you guys a little bit what's new, because there isn't all that much to see this week. I have a course outline, but truth be told, there isn't that much to look at this week, as it's pretty much just let's look at a bit of theory, and then afterward, let's simply have some fun within ZBrush. So it's probably not a whole lot to share on the course outline itself. So, okay, let's start talking then about a little bit of theory then about tertiary details. Now, I won't bore you guys too much with theory today. I want to really spend as much time as possible doing a lot of sculpting, but it still helps a little bit to have a bit of an idea of where we are going there, because there are things that are really important to observe if you've never observed these before. There are some things there that are very, very important there. So this is, while I'm here, so this is essentially the head that we will explore today. We're essentially going to rebuild all these tertiary details. This is something I've done in about 2 hours. Took me this far. There's a lot to improve. There's a lot I want to improve on this, and that I will in the next few days, because I think this head has a pretty good base, like that's one of the great things about sketching out heads really quickly, right? It's that if a head doesn't really work after you've spent a bit of time just sketching it out, or just throw it away. But once you do actually have a head, like in this particular case, you're like, hey, actually, I think this head works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. Then you haven't spent a lot of time. And then you can be like, okay, I will take this to the next stage. I will take this to the tertiary detail stage. Let me just go ahead here and load our starting point, I suppose. Because this is more or less where we will end at the end of the class. But throughout the next few days, I will continuously myself continue to work on it and continue to improve it. Let me just go ahead here and load our starting point for this, and then we will talk about the process, of course. Let me just show you guys what that looks like. So here, and which version is it? Oh my god, I don't remember what version. Let me look at the timestamps. Do it. Come on. Yeah, there you go. Cool. So this is our starting point. Had a bit of fun yesterday just sketching this out from an older base that I have. Pretty much just redid a lot of the details, a lot of the secondary shapes. I had also I kind of also gave myself the challenge of sculpting completely asymmetrically. So I took a much older head that I had, and I just pretty much just completely redid all the secondary shapes, and I did them all with no symmetry on, because that simply seemed like a good practice to do. And I think it actually turned out that I wasn't really sure where I was going to wind up with this, but I think like having sculpted this without symmetry. The secondary shapes without symmetry really helps a lot to give it a very naturalistic look that I really, really like, and that I think, I've been experimenting here and there lately with turning off symmetry, but I really like it. I think it's a great idea to sculpt asymmetrically as much as possible. It's a lot harder. It takes a bit more time, but I think that the result itself is certainly worth it in the end, and it also got me to practice a lot, because like I think we all kind of have a bit of a preference, when we sculpt with symmetry, we're like always sculpting on the same side of the face. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like almost always sculpting on this side of the face. But if you sculpt asymmetrically, it's like suddenly you gotta be like, no, wait, okay, I'm doing this here. And then you go on the other side, it's like, okay, I have to sculpt that at the same position and same angle, but then it's kind of mirrored, and there's probably a side that you practice a bit less, and that will essentially get you to have to practice your own observation skills on the other side as well. And I think that you gain a lot from that personally. So you can consider me a convert. From like now on, I'll be sculpting a lot more asymmetrically and a lot earlier on. I think it still makes sense to sculpt like the primary volumes using symmetry on, because, well, I mean, like it's such a basic thing that you could sculpt those asymmetrically for sure, and I will probably practice that just for the sake of it, and kind of see where that kind of brings me there. But I don't think it's strictly necessary to do so to still get a very naturalistic result there. But certainly once you get to the secondary shapes, and you start sculpting wrinkles and like all of that stuff, I think there's I think that the effort is well worth it, really. So I kind of went ahead and I kind of just had some fun and more or less just sculpted almost all of what you guys are seeing here with no symmetry. That was really, really cool. And so like I spent a few hours on this yesterday, maybe like 2. And then I had this base, and I was like, I think this is a pretty solid base. Like, let's build our tertiary details for today based on that, right? And had the head not worked out, well, I could have just thrown it away and that's it. I would not have lost anything really because I would have gained so much knowledge anyway through it. So that was super awesome. But yeah, so that's our starting point for today. And what we'll do essentially is that we'll talk pretty much about everything that we have to talk about to go from here and to go about here. We should be able to do this, pretty much do all of this today. There's a lot more I would like to improve on this. So we'll also talk about that. This isn't a final head in any sort of way, but it is essentially a head that will that covers a lot of the different tools, different techniques I really want to show you guys today, and I really want to talk about and delve really deep into. You'll see that my workflow is just like it's true for me, like all the time. All right, I don't really look at what other people do most of the time. In terms of, like I look at people's result, but I don't necessarily look at their process. Like when people work these sorts of things now, like I don't really look at how other people work most of the time. I just grab software and I just do whatever seems to make sense. It's kind of how I learned Marvelous Designers, how I learned Substance Designer as well, which makes it so that like I kind of always work in ways that are very different. Now, of course, anyone who works with these softwares will often, work with similar techniques because once you discover something that works really well, it works really well. And, other people will also kind of discover the same technique at the same time and stuff, but at the same time, I think there is a lot of what I'll show you guys that really probably has never really been shown before. Now, these are bold statements to make, so I'm sure that once the class is done, I'll probably eat my words, and you guys will throw me a bunch of YouTube videos of other people working the way that I particularly work. But at the very least, especially using the surface noise plugin more specifically, I guess. But as far as I know, I came to the workflow I'll show you guys by my own through my own practice there, which isn't to say that other people may not do the same thing, but I don't personally know of other people who work exactly the way that I personally work. So yeah, we'll break that down. I hope there will be some interesting stuff in there for you guys at the very least. I think that there will be some things that will kind of open your eyes as to what we can do within ZBrush in terms of tertiary details. It's not necessary to only use alphas. They're very useful, but you'll see that I don't actually rely on alphas that much. There are a few alphas I use, like the ones I have already shown or sent to you guys on outgang.studio for the handouts for this week. But I'm not that alpha heavy, really. I'm actually more, I very much like to use procedural tools as much as possible to build a nice base really quickly of tertiary details. Anyway, we'll delve into that once the time is right. But first, I really just want to start with just a little bit of theory as far as tertiary details is concerned. Now, I won't bore you guys today with theory. I would like at some point to record an actual class on outgang.studio that is essentially all the tertiary details of the face and how they are formed, like just really do the anatomy of the tertiary details of the face. I would like to do that at some point. It's not in the pipeline for now in terms of classes, but if we can sort of slip that in there at some point in the future, I think that could nicely round out the knowledge that we have. But for now, at least, just consider this to be a very gentle introduction to the topic of tertiary details on a face and what to expect there. Okay. So let's put this aside. We'll come back on this once the time is right. So essentially, when I think of tertiary details, and this actually goes beyond simply, perhaps I can go back to this for now. When I think of tertiary details, okay, I think of pattern recognition in the sense that when I think of tertiary details, even beyond tertiary details as it applies to faces, but tertiary details, that is something that you can apply to like anything really, like if you're building a house, you would have tertiary details in there somewhere. And for me, there's essentially just the sort of icing on the cake. It's kind of what you add to something to make it look finished, to add all of that sort of surface detail, sort of surface goodness that kind of everyone likes, but that has no impact as far as the structure and construction of something is concerned there. So for me, tertiary details is something that is applicable to pretty much everything, not just faces, but as I said, houses, robots, hard surface. Once we'll do hard surface together, probably towards the end of summertime, we will work a lot on tertiary details as well. As far as hard surface tertiary details are concerned, we will certainly take some time to look at those. And therefore, for me, tertiary details, once you kind of understand what they are, like you start to observe them left and right in different contexts. But for me, tertiary details, at the core of it, is that idea of having a family of different types of details. Okay. So, just a quick example, if you take like hard surface stuff, like what kind of tertiary details would you have? Well, probably things like rivets, bolts, construction lines, panel lines, probably the kind of little texture maybe you would have on certain things, and scratches, these sorts of things. Like anything like that kind of adds a bit of life, a bit of just a bit of visual interest, but that doesn't necessarily have an impact on the major shapes of something. For me, would be a tertiary detail in the case of hard surface, and we'll certainly talk more about that once the time is right. Tertiary details then. So, okay, for face, what kind of tertiary detail do we have? What can we expect there? And I will ask you guys who are here in the chat right now, what kind of family of tertiary details can we actually have on a face there? So why don't I throw you guys the question and see what you guys can actually come up with right away.
Scars.
Ooh, all right. Yes, that is indeed a good one. I do like that one. Yeah, let's go for that one. Cool. What else do we have? How about I write these things down while we're there? Scars is definitely one of them. It's not the first one I would have started with, but I think that is very legitimately a good answer.
Molds.
Scars. What else? What did we say?
Mole.
Like moles, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, moles. Like scars, like some like very ropey scars, right? Some moles, like some stuff like that. Yeah, moles. All right. What else do we got, guys? There's a lot that we are missing. It's like we're just
Pores.
getting started here. What?
Some pores.
Pores, yeah. I thought like everyone was gonna start with those. Of course, pores. We love pores, right? Pores that kind of have a bit of a kind of look like that there. We got some pores. What else we got? What else do we have? Come on, I'm expecting to build. I'm expecting to run off the page at some point, guys. What else we got?
Wrinkles.
Wrinkles. Wrinkles. Yeah, wrinkles. There you go. Sorry, I'm in a good mood today. All right. What else we got? There's some obscure one that I hope that people will start to mention. We'll see how far we go. There's at least 5 missing. We can probably add at least 5 to this. Maybe 5, yeah. We'll see if we make it to 5. Any other ideas, guys? They get more and more obscure as time goes on. Okay. Let me throw a bunch of them there. Let me throw a bunch of them in there then. Okay. We got some, now it's going to become weird at some point, okay? Perhaps, but, okay, first of all, let's add some pimples. Yeah. I should take some red for that. Right, it's kind of pimples like that. Yeah. And then it goes here, and then you have a bit of a white head here, you know. And then you sort of pop it, and it explodes like a volcano like that. Oh yeah, I got some pimples in there. You know, I've actually been thinking about this. This is probably too much information, but I don't care. We're here to learn, and I think this has academic value. I was actually thinking about it. I'm like, why is it that people cannot resist popping a pimple? I was kind of thinking about that, and you know what I've realized over the last few years, guys, is that the moment that there's something that we don't understand about human nature, we just have to think about evolution, and then we can usually figure out the answer, and the answer makes a ton of sense. Why do we like to pop pimples? Because, well, I don't know if you guys saw or like have ever watched videos online of like people like popping like or like people like going to like Africa and catching these worms, and then they get these worms that just insert into their skin and stuff. And the way to release the worms to get them out is just you fucking pop them. You know? Then you have like the worm that just sticks out. I'm not gonna play a video, guys. You guys have enough imagination on your own, and there is also YouTube that is there for that, by the way. But there is an evolutionary reason, a survival reason why popping pimples is something that we like to do, because it usually means that you are clearing your skin of debris or other more invasive shit that could be in there, really, you know. So there is a reason why we like to do it. I think, you know, because it's simply if everyone or if no one did that, then a lot more people would die of disease and stuff like that. I feel like that's my completely unproven theory as to why that is, by the way. But it just, for me, it just makes a lot of sense. Okay. Too much information. I know. You guys are gonna learn that I like to talk about stuff like that sooner or later. What else we have? I'll stop teasing you guys. What else we have? Okay. Acne scars. You know, which kind of like looks like these kind of like very deep, very large pits in the skin that you could have in different places and stuff. People who had a lot of acne. Acne scars. If you guys want to pitch a few, I'm certainly listening. Okay, let me get into a few obscure ones to get them out of the way. We have something called milia, which looks like little white dots that you can have. Milia. Let's start looking at pictures of these because everything so far has been relatively easy to understand, I suppose. But what am I talking about now? What am I talking about? Take a look at this. All these white little spots that you guys are kind of seeing here. Actually, no, those would technically be... Those aren't milia, actually. We'll come back on that afterward, but it is very similar. It is very similar. Sorry, it's gonna get gross, all right? I want you guys to take a look at this here, right? Like, if we start to observe references, okay? Like, this is very interesting, and it speaks to the power of really looking at really close-up images and really kind of looking for those family of details when we look at faces of people, okay? Like, because we all know about skin pores. We all know, like she's got a lot of acne scars here, stuff like that. We have some pores here that are enlarged. But, like the thing about tertiary details really is that they really have this very localized look to them, Like the tertiary details of a face will always change based off where you are on a particular face. It will look very different depending on where you are in a particular face there. And you guys can see that there's definitely zones here. Like if we look here at the malar zone, we can see a lot of those enlarged pores. We can see a lot of those acne scars that are here, unfortunately, over her cheeks. There is some of that there, right? But like the moment that we reach here, the border here, and we start getting into the zone of the eyes here, right? You can start looking at that, like you can see how the skin starts looking very, very different, right? And so like this is the thing about tertiary details. Like we won't do a comprehensive breakdown of like what tertiary detail goes where, like I would keep that for a anatomy of tertiary details at some point in the future class. But what I want you guys to at least observe, if there is one takeaway from this, okay, is that it is important to look at, well, there's actually two takeaways. But right now we're just talking about the first one here. It's important to really understand that tertiary details look very different based off the zone of the face that you are. So just get yourself some bunch of really high close-up, high-res images like these and really just start to observe for yourself the kind of patterns that the tertiary details take in different zones. So yeah, okay, so take a look here around the eye, all right? If you take a look here around the eye, right, what can we spot? There's all these little bumps here, these white little bumps right there. All these tiny, tiny little bumps there. And these are what we call milia. Usually when there's a white accumulation like that under the skin, it's usually some form of keratin that builds up. And I believe that is the case here. I'm not fully sure that that is what milia are, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are. So milia are small white bumps that appear on the skin. They're usually grouped together on the nose, cheeks, chin, though they may appear elsewhere. And yeah, so it's these little tiny bumps. You get some of these a bit everywhere, but you especially often get those around the skin of the eye, because the skin of the eye is so thin that the moment that there's just a tiny little thing in there, you start to see them. So you start getting these kind of things in different places. But especially around the eye, you often get some of these. This is it starts to get a bit too gross there. I'm not going to click on that. But yeah, so these are called milia. Tiny little white bumps. It's not much you can do. It's benign. I don't think there's any particular reason to worry about them, but they are a tertiary detail that we want to worry about. And we'll certainly talk about how to create them. Oh, right, milia. Maybe one that you guys didn't know. Let's add another one to that. Let's add the big brother of milia, which we call keratinosis. Keratinosis pilaris. Okay. Also known as chicken skin. All right. Prefer this one. Chicken skin. And which is essentially like milia, but that are bigger. So still white. See, I knew we were gonna run off the page at some point. Still white. Let me do a canvas size. Let me make this bigger. I'm in such good shape today, guys. I really want to start streaming on Sundays. Feeling so good. Okay, where are we with this? Chicken skin. Okay. What the hell? Chicken skin. Chicken skin. Take a look at this. This is what chicken skin looks like. I mean, I'm on actual chicken skin. Which means I'm not going to click on KFC because I don't think that's chicken. There you go. Chicken skin, right? This kind of effect there. This is what chicken skin kind of looks like. Have all these kind of bumps like this. And it just so happens that we have these bumps on, like we sometimes, I mean, I'm not going to say often, but we certainly, there are people like us that have this, you know, which kind of reminds me of the goosebump kind of look that we have here. It kind of looks like milia, but the thing about chicken skin, or what you call keratinosis pilaris, is that it forms bumps that are bigger, essentially. So it's like bigger versions of milia, and this forms by an accumulation of keratin, where the name comes from, within the hair shafts that we have. So you get a bit of like keratin that sort of builds up every place that you have like a little hair that sticks out of the surface of the skin, and you wind up having this kind of look. So this often happens in neck. I see this a lot in like people's neck. So for me, that's a detail that I like to add when I do neck details and stuff. It's just a very common one. I have a good picture here somewhere. This one here. Take a look at this. Take a look at that. See all this here? See all these bumps here? Now, you know, it's fine if you don't know the distinction between keratinosis pilaris and milia. It's fine. Doesn't really matter. It's mostly just a zone, really. And these are just bigger versions. And, you know, there are anatomical differences. We don't care. We just care about the fact that you often have these kind of details, and it's good to add these to the neck zone. It kind of just makes the neck, I think, looks naturalistic. So there's another family. So there's another family of detail we can add to a face. All right. What else are we missing? Scars, moles, pores, wrinkles, pimples, acne scars, amelia, keratinosis. Okay, I'm gonna add one that's not as scientific, but I just think is very, very nice, which I call, or rather is called, a Voronoi. So a Voronoi pattern, or Voronoi, I guess, wrinkles. It's not an anatomic term is in any kind of shape or form. But you guys may or may not know what Voronoi is. It's just a type of noise. So a Voronoi noise, it just looks like this here. You know, it kind of looks like sort of if you have a bunch of random like cells of the body and you sort of they kind of all grow to fill up the space that they have, you'll wind up having something that kind of looks like this, right? So commonly cells of the body will take a Voronoi pattern as they grow and stuff like that. And I find that skin, little wrinkles of skin also kind of often take a kind of Voronoi-ish kind of shape, you know? Which is really just based off of observing a bunch of references. So let's go through a bunch of stuff that we have here. For example, lips commonly have this Voronoi pattern. And if we take a look at lips, so we have a bunch of wrinkles here, we have a bunch of stuff, right? If you take a look at this here, so this is a very Voronoi-like lip, or lips, rather. You guys can see the kind of pattern, you know, like that all of these kind of little, I don't want to call them boxes, but all these little compartments you're kind of taking are sort of interlocking together. It starts to form this kind of Voronoi-ish pattern. So that's very interesting. And if we go through a bunch of references here, here's another very Voronoi-like piece of skin. So this isn't on the face. This is on a hand. Turns out it's my own hand, actually. And yeah, you guys can also see here a very Voronoi-like sort of pattern that starts to create from the wrinkles there. And yeah, so lips commonly take that kind of shape. Other places in the skin too often take a kind of Voronoi-like pattern to it. We can go through and find a few of these very easily. We'll see once we start going through a lot of these references here that we do start having a very Voronoi-like distribution of micro wrinkles, as you guys can kind of see here if we take a look at stuff like this. So what if we had a way to create Voronoi patterns and marks in ZBrush? Wouldn't that be nice? Well, it turns out that yes, we actually do. Can actually make that very, very simply. So we'll abuse that when it comes time to create our tertiary details. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out, you know, like when you're looking for tertiary detail or tertiary detail patterns, you know, you are looking for the kind of pattern that these details typically have, you know. What is the distribution of these tertiary details? What is the spacing between them? What is their shape? What is their size? These sorts of things. These are the kind of things that you want to start to observe, you know. And certainly once we start seeing something that is highly repeatable on a surface, like a lot of these fine wrinkles we've taken a look at. Take a look at this. I know this is gross, all right? But if you guys take a look at the skin here, right? There's this kind of Voronoi quality to the way that the micro wrinkles get created, and that is essentially what we will do together. I'm sorry, guys. I know. Okay. All right. I'm gonna close this. All right. Fine. I apologize. Maybe I should put a warning on this gross stuff ahead at the start of the class. But hey, it's a character art class, guys. You gotta get used to this, okay? All right, Voronoi wrinkles, sort of micro wrinkles that sort of form this very Voronoi-like sort of structure or appearance to them. No, kind of looks something like that, right? Some type of random distribution of little compartments. Whatever, it's not the best Voronoi shape, but you guys get the idea at this point. Okay, scars, moles, pores, wrinkles, pimples, acne scars. Milia keratinosis pilaris, also known as chicken skin. Voronoi wrinkles. What else are we missing? What else are we missing, guys? What else are we missing? One of the most important ones, actually, we haven't mentioned it, but you wouldn't think about it if you haven't been trained to think about it previously. Let me actually move this on the side. Sorry, guys. I have a tendency to do that. Don't be afraid to just scream on the stream, Laura, what are you doing? Move your goddamn window. We can't see what you're writing down because your face is blocking it. Because I get so in the flow that I just forget about it. There's one that we're missing. Super important. Extremely important. In fact, if we don't have that, we'll never have a proper looking skin, I feel like. But you wouldn't think about it if you haven't really kind of been trained, I suppose, to spot these kind of things. All right. What is it? Some noise. Simple as that. Noise of different shapes. Noise, different shapes. And sizes. And, noise is just it just means a random sort of random distribution of height and information. Something like that, right? So you're like, what? Noise? Like, yeah, noise. Of course, noise. Right? We start looking at, let's say, a few of these references. If I go back, could say that there were a few ones pretty good at the beginning there. Let me just go through these. Almost there. Oh, that was in a different one, actually. Different folder. I think it was, oh no, these ones here, these ears that we have, right? Noises, right? Like sometimes the details, you can't really read them too well. They're just noise. Look at this. Look at how noisy this ear is, right? It's like we can't clearly spot skin pores, although they are there. We can't cleanly spot a Voronoi pattern. This is just a noisy surface. It kind of just looks like noise. It's just noise. It's just noise. So noise. Tertiary detail. All right. What else are we missing? What else are we missing? All right, here's one that I like. Another disgusting one. Comedones. AKA blackheads and whiteheads. Let's look at a few examples. Right? So these are skin pores. Or rather, I mean, okay, so the moment that you start, this is a rabbit hole, guys, but the moment that you start researching skin pores, you'll realize that the way that we think of skin pores, these are not technically skin pores. These are actually something else. We'll call them skin pores because that is colloquially, I suppose, the term that we usually use, but these are not technically skin pores, actually. And I won't bore you guys with the research, but there has been a lot of research done into this, and people are like, these aren't skin pores. We don't know what they are. We just don't know. Like, people don't actually know why we have these sort of enlarged pores on the surface. We all call them pores, but they're not pores. Skin pores are too small. Skin pores are very, very small. In fact, most skin pores are invisible to the naked eye because they're so small you can't just see them. But you wind up having these, all of this kind of golf ball sort of appearance to the surface of the skin often. That is probably the result of sun damage, or dry skin, or a whole bunch of other stuff. Acne too will create that, but it is not technically skin pores. We will call it skin pores, else this class will get very confusing. But I want you guys to know these are not technically skin pores, okay? They're just pits on the surface of the skin. And there are skin pores in there, but they're not technically skin pores. Anyway. That's something to delve into at another day, okay? So blackheads, whiteheads, all right? This is going to get disgusting again. I apologize. Here's a blackhead. It's a very big blackhead. Here's a bunch of smaller blackheads. This sorry. This was a keratinosis pilaris. No, think about it. But blackheads, okay, if you take a look at this reference, these tiny little dots that you have there. So blackheads are not necessarily enlarged. They're just a skin pore. So blackheads are technically skin pores, though. They're just a clogged skin pore that is filled with keratin. Or I think it's keratin. Could be something else than that, but it is filled with something, and then that thing that fills the skin pore oxidizes, which makes it turn black, and therefore you wind up having a blackhead. So those are skin pores that are filled up. We call blackheads. Okay, here's a bunch of them, a bunch of blackheads. And then you have the opposite of blackhead, which is a whitehead, which is, at this point, I guess, we could put in the family of acne before or something, but they are slightly different. But anyway, blackheads and whiteheads. I'll group them together because for me, a whitehead is just a something that is clogged up, but I don't want to get into the research there. I guess we'll just keep blackhead for now. Not to go down that rabbit hole right now. Okay. What else are we missing? This list is not long enough, guys. We are missing some. We are missing. I'm actually missing a lot. I won't. Just in the interest of time, that's probably good enough, right? Like, we feel as if that's probably a good starting point. We get that far, I think we've probably done our job. We won't get that far together today, but can I move all this, please? There's just one more I want to add, I guess, in the interest of time. Okay, what are we missing? Last one for me. Last one. Veins. Right? There's places we have veins on the surface of the skin. We can see them. These little veiny little things. Yeah, it's probably good enough. Like, if you guys kind of get through this list, I think what it's going to do is that it's going to get you to start to look at tertiary details in the face in a very different way, because like that's what I do when I look at tertiary details, especially for something organic. I really think through all of these things. I'm kind of thinking, okay, what does the surface look like? What sort of appearance does it take? Like, what sort of bumps do I get? What is the distribution of bumps? Because sometimes the bumps very clearly look like bumps that you could do that maybe look like dents on the surface of the skin or something like that. In other time, the bumps have more of a uniform, noisy sort of appearance. Like, it's good to kind of think of that, like what kind of noise almost do all of these tertiary details start to look like? Like, it's good to kind of have that reflection a little bit there. But essentially, if you guys are interested in this, okay, and you're like, okay, I kind of want to know, so Laura, what is everything that we've missed? Well, the further we go, I think it's going to get more obscure. So you don't have to know more than what I've said there. But for the little scholars in you that are interested by this, I invite you guys to go check out a site that is called Skin Site. I just need this there, actually. Skin Site. And what you're going to find there is everything that you did not know could be a tertiary detail for a face. Skin conditions. Why don't we go through that? There you go. These are all the tertiary details you could have on the face. I don't know. Let's take a random thing here. Let's go through M. Thought there were pictures here, actually, so that we could actually see them at the same time. No pictures. No pictures this time. But like, okay, what does this look like? Well, okay, there you go. Here's a tertiary detail you could add. Of course, a lot of these are diseases, so you probably wouldn't add them to a lot of people. But hey, sometimes it's good. It's just good inspiration, I guess. Yeah. So, we were talking about keratosis pilaris, right? There you go. Here's some examples of that. So yeah, anything that you could think of could appear on the surface of the skin. It's probably already in there somewhere. I have no idea what xerosis is. Why don't we click on that? Ooh, that doesn't look very nice. I mean, none of this looks nice, right? But hey, this could be inspiration for something. This could be inspiration. So yeah, Skin Site, good reference. Go check it out. Don't do that before lunchtime. All right. So I hope I'm getting you guys to think in terms of families of details, of patterns of details that can appear on the surface of the skin. So let's go to ZBrush then and start putting that in a practical context. Okay, so I started working on this head. Now I've spent about 2 hours on this so far. I don't consider this to be a final head in any sort of way in terms of tertiary details. And I'll continue working on it because I think I have a pretty good starting point here. As I said, I don't often when I sketch a head out, I'll get to this stage here, which is this one here, and then I'll be like, yeah, I'll just yeah, I'm done. I've got what I wanted out of this. Maybe I'm not super proud of the work I've done or something else, and I'll just usually throw it away, you know. Most of the heads I do, I just throw them away. You never see them. But once in a while, I'm like, hey, I think this actually kind of works really well, you know. And then I'm like, okay, this one here, I want to take it to the next stage. Then I want to start to work on it, right? So perhaps I can talk about that process very briefly because that is essentially what we have done last week together. You know, last week we have taken a head that was sketched. If you guys remember, we took a head that was Dynameshed, that was sketched out using Dynamesh, and we converted that to subdivision mode. That is what we done last week, right? And well, that's pretty much where we are today. This is pretty much where we are right here. So I have taken my sketch. I have done a ZWrap of it to go from sketching to subdivision. And now this head, because it is now in subdivision mode, it is now ready to start my tertiary details, essentially. Yeah, so once you're quite happy with a head that you've done, then you take that head that is a sketch, you convert it to subdivision, and then you start the tertiary detail process, essentially. So yeah, so I'll speak more about the process. But first, I just want to show you guys essentially where I am with this at this stage here. So I spent about 2 hours on this this morning. As you can see, you can actually build detail really, really quickly if you have some really good techniques there. So you don't necessarily need to spend days and days and days placing every little detail left and right manually there. In fact, I'm kind of allergic to that most of the time. I just don't have time. I'm like, sure, like it's fun to place certain details, and there are certain details, especially the skin pores on the cheek. You more or less have to place them manually because there's no way in ZBrush to do a non-overlapping scattering of details, fortunately. You have spray brushes, but we won't really use those because by and large, it creates details that overlap. And that is the worst thing you want to do for skin pores. It's going to look terrible, so don't do that. So there are some things that you have to place manually, but for the most part, I mean, a lot of this so far up to this point is really just, well, it's just using a bunch of noise passes and other things to build detail really, really quickly there, you know. So I can show you the layer stack then, because of course I use layers for this. So why don't we deconstruct the layer stack and we go back to our starting point then. So why don't we do that? So let's go through the inverse process then. Let's start from this result, deconstruct it to its beginning, and then we will reconstruct all the way to where this is right now. So let me go ahead here and show you guys the layer stack for this. And you guys can see it now. So this is my layer stack. You guys can see I have, well, actually there's only one untitled layer. So I've been fairly okay with this so far. In terms of naming my stuff there, you know? So there are places where it's still very sketchy and stuff. Like there's still some places on the list that I probably should have cleaned up the sketch a little bit more. But so on and so forth. But so far I've been able to build a lot of detail relatively quickly there. Left and right, just by using some proper techniques there. And okay, so let's break this down. Let's go through this layer stack. Let's see what's in there. And then we will talk about the process of building back to that afterward, right? Okay, so you guys can see, first of all, I have this little, the last layer down the stack is called bumps. Let me turn that off. You'll see it's very subtle. If I turn this off, it's just a bunch of little bumps left and right. Right? If I turn this back on, back off again, Just some very tiny little bumps. Nothing that special, just to break it up, just to add a bit more organicity to the surface. Very, very simple to do. We'll do that later. These are a few details I've added around the eyes. I'm not very proud of them. We'll talk about making some better eye detail later on. So let me just turn these off, But essentially, like, there is a point where I start to build details that become a bit more localized in terms of position on the face there. So these are eye details. These are all procedurally generated. I didn't sculpt these. And I'll show you guys how to do that. Very, very simple. Here's another layer around the eyes. Once more to start to build a bit of wrinkles in there. We'll talk about doing a better job on those together there. Afterward, we get to a layer here that is wrinkles. Let me turn that off. And you guys can see these are simply wrinkles. I started to sculpt. Or I have started to deepen, rather. And a lot of these is simply using the Dam Standard 2 brush, which I really like to use to sculpt wrinkles. It's a fantastic brush. It's not in your interface by default. You have to go grab it online. But if you just type, ZBrush Dam Standard 2 brush, Dam Standard 2 brush, you will find it. I believe it's free. So grab it, add it to your library. It should be in the library by default. It's a great brush to use. Okay, yeah, so I started to build those wrinkles using that brush there. Then I have a layer here. Now that one's a bit weird. It's called FBM. It's called, which means fractal Brownian motion. We have talked about noise, the fact that the surface often has this noisy appearance. This is what this FBM pass gives to me. If I turn it off, take a look. See the change on the skin there as I turn it back on and off. You guys can see that my skin starts to have a noisier appearance once I turn it on. Very, very simple. Very nice way to just break up the skin a little bit there, very, very simply. Fractal Brownian motion. After that, we get to a few details around the vermilion border of the lips that I have added using a Voronoi pass. Once more, not the details I'm the proudest of so far, but as a first pass, I think it's largely where it needs to be. So, not completely dissatisfied, but I'm looking forward to spend some time to do this even better there. All right. Over that, then, we have this large Voronoi layer. Let me turn that off and see what happens. You guys can see that it's mostly just wrinkles that are being built around the mouth and the lips there. Let me zoom in on this. Large Voronoi. So if you guys take a look at the lower lip there, maybe at this part here within the vermilion borders, these sorts of things, as I turn this off, you guys can see that I have all these tiny little wrinkles that are there that simply disappear as I turn this layer off. There's a few around the nose too. Large Voronoi pass. And then we have a small Voronoi pass. Let me turn it off. Let's see what happens. You guys can see the skin here. If you take a look at the skin here, what is happening here, you can see this nice kind of Voronoi, very diffused looking sort of Voronoi quality that the skin has. As I turn this off, you can see that the skin becomes flatter and flatter there. So there's a Voronoi pass here to simply build a bit of organicity as opposed to the surface again. Let's turn it off. All right, we get to this one here. It's called pores. Now these ones, I had to build them, had to place those manually there. So let me turn it off. You guys can see before I added those pores to the cheeks. And after. And I'll show you guys how to do that. It's not complicated. Just have to make a quick alpha. It's still there. I've given it to you guys. I'll show you how to make it. It's very simple. You guys want to make your own. Skin pores. We want to make sure not to put them everywhere on the face, because it shouldn't be everywhere on the face there. It should really just be in certain zones, these enlarged pores, especially around the cheeks, some of the forehead, some on the chin as well, but certainly not everywhere. Then we get to our comedones, our little black heads and white heads. Okay, if I turn this off, you guys can see here, especially on the nose, that's often where they're more visible, because the nose doesn't often have those enlarged pores that we have seen. The nose doesn't often have that. The nose is a lot flatter than people think. Like, people have tendency to put like a whole lot of like really heavy skin pores on the nose there, and that's a mistake. The nose is actually relatively smooth in most cases. There are, of course, exceptions there, but for most people, the nose is relatively smooth. And you get just these tinier bumps, blackheads and whiteheads there, but you don't have these enlarged pores that you have elsewhere most of the time. Anyway, so little comedones added to the skin. We have our milia around the eyes. All these little tiny little bumps that you guys can see here. I can turn this off. You guys can see that my milia disappear. Next, we have our chicken skin, which is actually more in the neck zone. So the big brother of the milia there is our chicken skin. If I kind of zoom out and we can kind of look at it from here. You guys can see all this tiny little chicken skin effect that is kind of appearing here on the surface. So I can turn this off and no more chicken skin. No more chicken skin. And finally, we're up to the last layer, which is what I call directionality. Okay. Now this one's it's particularly interesting. Directionality, which you can see for the most part. I mean, it's mostly sort of skin pore-ish, but it's skin pores that are stretched on one direction. Okay. Like if I kind of zoom in here on the cheeks, right? You guys can see that, yeah, sure, there's tiny little pores, but there's also kind of little streaks also on the surface here. So these are directional lines on the surface, or directional wrinkles, or almost directional skin pores almost. I just like to call it directionality because it helps to build a bit of directionality to the skin there. So let me just turn this off, and then you guys can see that we're pretty much back at our starting point. Once I get rid of these, we're pretty much back at our starting point. Yeah, directionality. Haven't talked about that so far, but that's very, very interesting, okay? Because this is the thing about tertiary details for a face, okay? The face is something that compresses and stretches, right? As we talk, as we have all these facial expressions that we do. Skin builds directionality in its tertiary details, okay? There's a lot even of tertiary details beyond skin pores. If you guys start looking at literature and stuff that get aligned following the directionality of the skin. So there are things, I can't quite point to things off the top of my head just like that, but there are even skin disease and these sorts of things that will align themselves quite naturally with the directionality of the skin. Because as we talk, as we compress the skin, you know, the details essentially often get compressed in one direction there. And that becomes very obvious the moment that we start looking at details. So this is the second takeaway I want you guys to take away from this more theoretical section of the class then, is that skin details often have this directional appearance to them, okay? Let's go through a few of these examples or a few of these images until we start seeing some clear directionality in there, okay? First of all, we have some here, right? If we just look at this random one, take a look at all these streaks here that we have on the surface there. It's all stretched in one direction. There's a bit of compression right now that is happening because she is activating her levator labii superioris elacanasii, and therefore there is a bit of compression on the skin. And because there's a bit of compression, we get tiny little wrinkles that form perpendicular to the compression, which is the same as what we had said in the context of cloth and fold anatomy. Wrinkles, folds always form perpendicularly to the compression. And that is true for a face too. We also have some beautiful directionality here. You guys take a look at this. See how all the details seem to be like somewhat aligned in one direction? Let's look at other examples of that. So yeah, for something like an ear, you know, there isn't that much directionality because it doesn't compress that much, you know, like, but there is still a bit of directionality in there. It's not fully random, the distribution of details there, if you see what I mean. But the moment that you have, especially zones that compress a lot there, so there's a beautiful, like, first of all, these here are back, right? Sorry if it's gross again, but you still have that directionality in there. Two of the wrinkles. Here, if we take a look at this, gross again, I know, but hey, better get used to it. Again, we have all these wrinkles, have all this nice directionality to it. Directionality, directionality, directionality. Take a look at this. Take a look at the directionality of the skin pores here and the tiny little wrinkles. Once more, directionality. Take a look at that. That's insane, right? This is crazy. This is what happens when you compress a forehead, when you compress your corrugators. You wind up having all the skin of the forehead that gets compressed and starts to create these vertical streaks over the surface there. So this is beautiful directionality. This is on the side of a face. So this is around orbicularis oculi in the region we call the crow's feet, right? look at this beautiful directionality that skin takes in this particular zone, especially when it's compressed. But see, that's the thing. Even when the skin is not compressed, there is a bit of directionality that is left over in there because of, if you compress the skin so much, at some point it starts to become like almost memory folds, right? Like it starts to get built in there and you're sort of stuck with those afterward. So directionality, super important, right? We want to try and capture that as much as possible on our surface. And that is the second takeaway from the theoretical portion of this class. All right, let's do some ZBrush, guys. Let's do some ZBrush. Okay, so first of all, if you take a look at this, okay, so this is the model before I had started to build my layer stack, okay? And I want to show you guys, this is the sketch though, if I go back and forth. This is my sketch. Let me turn off the polythene. Doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so first of all, before I start to build tertiary details over my surface, before I do that, I want to take my model, the way that it looks like this, that's still very sketchy because I've sketched out all my primary and secondary shapes and did all that good stuff there. First of all, you guys can see I was overly ambitious sculpting this. I was at 50 mil. Let me bring it down to 12 because by and large, there isn't in this particular case a good reason to be that high. And it would slow us down anyway. So let me just delete the highest subdivision level so that we go back to something that is manageable. Okay. So, if you sketch your head so far, if you followed everything that we've said on outgang.studio as to how to go about doing that, you'll essentially get to the stage here where your head will look like this, and I consider that, at this point here, like any sort of like really, really sort of big secondary details or, at this point, some people do refer to these as tertiary volumes, by the way, like the smaller little volumes that I have here, and then what I commonly call tertiary details, I actually usually call those, or a lot of people call these surface volumes. Okay. I'm kind of blurring the line here between secondary shapes and tertiary shapes and surface shapes for me. I consider, like that there are 3 detail levels and not 4. Some